Hey everybody, DJ Lou here. I haven't talked about advertising in a little bit. You know what? It's time to remedy that. Let's talk about this. All right, everybody, before we start the video, please navigate down, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you ding that notification bell as well. Also, make sure to like the video. And please, if you want to support the channel, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. So for some years, actually I think I have 4 of them right in a row, I would take my experiences with advertising, everything from word of mouth to each property that I personally had experienced, and kind of give my rating on what I felt for each one. Now, I haven't updated that in a couple years. Things have been generally stable. My opinion hasn't changed a whole lot on things, but it's 2020, COVID has happened and all that. I've definitely seen things go up and down because of, just the status of everything. So let's kind of just, re-encapsulate everything that I've experienced, or especially over the past couple years and especially now. First and foremost, word of mouth, be it your prior customers, be it venues, be it a photographer that you worked with a videographer that you work with, any of these professionals tends to be your bread and butter. If a client gets in front of these people first, you want them to talk you up. You want to have your prior experiences speak for itself and kind of remind that, that professional is like, hey, this company, this is somebody you absolutely should work with. So I can't stress enough to continue those relationships, be it, with your prior customers, making sure, of course, that they review you, but also just the happy birthdays, the happy holidays, if something important happened in their life, like a birth or something like that, stay friends with them. Make sure you reach out to them. Make sure you just keep in contact. Celebrate, their anniversaries by little reminders, like a little photo on social or something like that. It's really, really important to keep those relationships going because they're going to be some of the best people that do talk you up. One of the reasons why I invested in my Soundcraft UI16 and UI24, not only do I record my events for my own use, but I can pass off the best quality audio to these videographers. That makes their life so much easier. And, I've gotten a lot of leads over the years because of these great relationships that I have made with videographers. Just by doing a little bit of extra, help with getting them to where, gets their quality up, it's going to help me in the end. So I can't stress enough, keep those relationships going. Remind the venues you might not have worked with in the past couple of years of, hey, I'm still here and, things are still going great. Keep those relationships going. The second thing I can't stress enough is make sure you have a quality website. Your website is your calling card. For those that use Facebook as their primary website, stop. You don't have control over what they present, how it looks, how things change over time when they went from a numerical rating over to just an approve or disapprove or recommended and not recommended. You don't have control over those properties. They could go away tomorrow. Just look at places like Google Plus, for instance. So get a quality website. If you don't know how to get a quality website, go have somebody make it for you. And I can't say this enough, and I know I've said this in seminars and all that. Even though social's big and social's huge, your website becomes essentially, it should be, your main sales funnel point. This is where, if they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on even TikTok or whatever, if they know of your website and they come to your website, that website should be enough to get them to call you. Can't stress enough, great website. And if we're going to talk website, we got to talk SEO. And this should be part and parcel. If you're going to actually invest into somebody creating a website for you, they should also have a good concept and knowledge of SEO, be it local. So this way your local pack that you would see on Google, the 3-pack or sometimes the 4-pack, that you're displayed there, that everything is kind of in sync with all the other properties out there on the web, to make sure your content is formed properly. So this way, when the search engines go crawling your content, it'll actually find it and you'll be weighted fairly well within the pages. Very, very important. So, if you are investing in a website, which you absolutely should, or if you have an existing website and need some tweaks, having a good SEO based company is definitely a way to capitalize on this all. If you're not doing video now, now is well past the time at this point. Be it if you're just capturing just bits of video from, an event that you're doing to, the blog style to articles like, when I'm doing these kind of, one-on-one things on video. Clients want to see that. Clients want to have the kind of like established, I want to see what this person is doing and how they're approaching things. It's part of the reason why I kept my brand of Paris Creative, both for the client side, but also like for my DJs only. I keep both of those together because I've actually had many clients kind of bleed over, go over to my for DJs only sections and either read my blogs or watch my videos. And I really think the videos add a really great element to it. And I know that I have converted some clients because of that. So get those videos out there, do a quick blog. If you have a great, tip for a couple or something like that, you got a good tech tip or something like that, don't be afraid to film yourself. Get that video out there, circulate it around. This has been the future. This is where things are definitely, and they've been, and they're going to continue to be. Now, social is kind of, I'm going to break it out into two things, free social and then paid social. So you absolutely should be on social media, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, even places like Pinterest, even places like LinkedIn. If you have content that is, that will work well in certain instances, you should apply it properly to those properties and not just across the board. Perfect example. If I'm creating a more business related article, like even like this advertising article, I'm going to throw this probably on Facebook, and I'm also going to throw it on LinkedIn. This is where businesses really thrive the most, and I get the most bang for the buck of getting things out there to begin with. On the flip side, if I have a photograph and I'm saying something specific about that photograph, definitely Instagram first, maybe Facebook, but I think Facebook doesn't get nearly as much traction in that regard. Net a few different circumstances. But of course, Instagram is kind of where it's at in that regard. I'm not a big TikTok person per se, but I definitely know some people that are playing the game well. If you know how to play the TikTok game, by all means, do something on that. And I definitely want to steer a little bit of my content over to there at some point. That might be a focus of late 2020 and 2021 kind of ideas, is like, how can I get something that will work well within that medium? But there's no universal content. So as you build your information, your photos out there, your presence out there, even your social tags, you need to make sure that they're hitting the right people, but you also have your own social tags. Once you kind of get that kind of all into a rhythm, I think you'll see some benefits out of it. There's not going to be straight leads coming in for the most part. You might get one or two, but for the most part, this is about name recognition. This is about brand identity. This is about a consistency to get your information out there to the public. Now, for some things that I'm a little neutral on, one of those is business cards. Business cards are still, I think, a good asset to have. I think you do have to stick out. With my two main businesses, I have square cards that have different characteristics that I think help stick out. So if I'm handing it to somebody, it will kind of stick in their memory. It's not just going to get simply discarded because it looks like the rest of the other cards out there. I don't think you gain a ton of value out there, but if you're, especially like, for instance, if I'm doing an expo, I'm just handing out a business card. I'm not doing trifolds or anything like that because my information could change. I'd rather them funnel to my website. Same thing if I'm talking to a customer just, randomly at like a supermarket or something like that, and I think they're a potential, I'm going to hand them my card just to have. So I always have a couple on me. They're actually, for my Paris Creative cards, they're pretty thick, so I can't stack a ton of them. But again, I think they're memorable. I think they have a sense of value beyond just a flimsy, simple card that's out there. And I think if you pay attention to the design If you have, something that's memorable on it, I think it adds value. Now, I don't think you lose customers because you don't have a business card, but I still think that there's some value in having it. Now, some places do have local link aggregators that still may be worth a value. I know here locally there's one. It's a small investment for me, so it's worth it. So, pay attention if there's something that kind of, sticks up there on SEO when you're doing organic searches. And if they are, and if it's something you can reach out and get to, it's always nice to have those links on there. They tend to be relatively, pennies essentially to invest in. So if they're not, if they're really expensive, then definitely give it a second thought or just don't invest at all. But just kind of be aware of what's still out there. Now, wedding expos 2020, they just really don't exist right now for the most part. I largely abandoned wedding expos as a whole. Around here, they actually started doing what I would call more like an open house kind of thing where they had a more limited audience that came in. But they also limited the businesses that were actually represented at the expo or open house or whatever we want to call this concept. And I found more value in that than in expos prior and all that. It's not, a constant rush of couples coming in. And to be honest, a lot of them had already picked their venue. So for the venue, it wasn't even worth it. A lot of times they've already picked their DJ. So what are you even doing there in the first place? You're not getting a lot of value out of it. I found that these open houses tended to bring in more people earlier on in the process. And because of that, they were definitely more ripe to, be able to obtain. I did do one of these, actually two of these in 2020 before everything had shut down. And I definitely got some value out of it. So I think the expo may be shifting away to this model. I do think that, especially the larger expos going forward, once things kind of start back up, I think that's going to drastically change into this model or just not exist at all. And it might be some time before the big expo concept is, ever comes around again. So, if and when things kind of come back up and you do find a local venue that wants you to participate in something like this might be better value than the expos have been in the past. At least for me, it has. Now we're going to get into pay-per-click, and this can be a few different entities. Be it Google with ads, used to be AdWords. And there are other sources, of course, Bing / Yahoo has their own properties as well. And there's some third-party pieces that do, the visual ads and whatnot. I'm going to kind of boil it all down into Google ads versus others. The others, I just really haven't gotten that much value in them, especially the visual ads tended to be higher costs per click than I had initially anticipated. Fewer clicks, and those coming in were really kind of shady. So I just discarded those to the side. Google ads, I do basically have two levels of ads that I do. One I would call the consistent ad. So this is wedding DJ that I do for my local area. And then this area, wedding DJ, which I do throughout the US. This is a big destination area. At least it used to be before COVID. Now, I still think I will get those out of area customers, but I think that will decrease with COVID and everything that's happened. But I have those two, and I run those pretty consistently. I'll say I spend about $50 to $100 a month on those ads for a consistent ad. Then I have some other ads I turn on and off occasionally. I do have venue specific ads. So this way I kind of get in front of the customer before I typically would. Those get really expensive though. I'm spending $6, $8, $10, $12 a click for those. So I'm very cognitive of when I turn those on, how long I run them for, and then when I'm going to be turning them off. I don't want to waste too much money on a space like this. So there's definitely, I still think decent value in pay-per-clicks as a whole, but you have to have a good strategy. You have to have your negative keywords. You have to, have good copy. For my particular copy, I put my price on the headline to ward off the tire kickers and whatnot. And then I'll put quotes of what couples have said about me as opposed to me trying to just sell myself. That's a big strategy as I do as a whole. So it kind of fits with what I do. But you might have a totally different strategy and whatnot, but have a strategy. Plan it out. Just don't throw a couple ads and just think that, the world's going to be great with that. Make sure you have a consistent message throughout. Now we're getting into the negatives. And one, probably the biggest negative that I have ever experienced is Yelp. Yelp is terrible. Yelp is a predatory company. They weigh their reviews to, if you're investing in advertising dollars, they might put some more of those they might put more of those reviews on your page. If you stop your advertising, there's been cases where negative reviews have been elevated to the main page, and other positive reviews have disappeared or gone down into the, where you have to dig 2-3 deep just to see those. I hate that practice. I don't think even the typical Yelp customer, maybe minus a couple markets, especially on the West Coast, I don't think that they're even our general type of customer. I think they're more budget minded. I think they're typically, they don't jump over to your website. They pretty much just stay funneled within Yelp. That's not to say that it doesn't work per se. Like, I do have my Yelp property, and I do get, on very rare occasions, somebody hitting my Yelp page, then going over to my website, then seeing things. The ones that call me directly, they usually don't even call me about wedding services. They're usually looking for something budget, and of course, it just doesn't work out. On the advertising side, it's utterly expensive. And again, because the audience isn't even quite the right audience, I don't think, the money just is wasted. And even when you get those $300, come over to Yelp and, try the ads, they're predatory in themselves. They're actually kind of a switch and bait, because I've actually had it where the very last time I thought I was going to try to game it a little bit. I knew I was getting that $300. I made sure that I wouldn't go over a certain amount, and I still got charged like an extra $100 for everything. They had these other fees, and the way a click would be handled differently in certain circumstances. It was really, really weird. Now, Wedding Wire, and not now known as the Not Worldwide, now known as the Wedding Pro, when you're dealing with the advertising costs, I just don't see the value still, unless you are a multi-op, or say you are a coming up business who hasn't established a good local presence yet. So you're trying to fill that calendar and you're only a couple years in. I think that's where this really kind of comes into play. I think for everybody else, we're wasting money, and we're wasting big money. I do know that they tried to reach out to me again earlier this 2020, and they're trying to throw all these, exceptionally high price numbers, especially now that they're dealing with Wedding Wire and the Knot at the same time, then throwing all these random discounts, and it still ends up being more expensive than it was before. And I kind of thought this would happen. I really thought, since there's no more competition in the direct to couples market, that they would naturally rise prices. One of the properties might ultimately go. And I think they still have the value of having the two brands for now, but I think that's going to merge over time. But because of that, you're spending a lot of money, especially if you're doing that spotlight type or featured one. You're spending quite a bit of money on that. And I also know a lot of people approach Wedding Wire or Not with, oh, I just need 2, 3, 4, 5 weddings and this is paid off. And that's the wrong approach to take. And I'm going to talk a little bit more philosophy on this, but see what you would actually be paying per click per conversion. Say if you're only getting 5 or 6 events out of this, you could be spending $400, $500, $600, $700 per converted lead. You could be spending $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 per converted lead. Super expensive, so not worth it in the end. So I stress, for those still invested in these properties, look at what your return on investment are. I know a lot of people do not. See how much you're actually spending, see how many leads are coming in, and see how many you're converting. And for me personally, as the single op, yes, I've already kind of established myself, so I'm already in a foothold like that. But, when I really kind of boil it down and kind of look back on things, how many leads am I turning away? If I'm investing in Wedding Wire or Not, how much am I actually, how many of these clients, am I turning away because these dates are no longer available? So if I'm spending all this money on Wedding Wire or not, and I'm turning away 40, 60, 80, 100 clients because I'm not available, even with success of converting these leads in Wedding Wire or not, I'm actually discarding all these potential free, just equally as good customers, maybe even better. So keep that in mind. For me personally, I did the calculus where I was turning enough away. My clients, the quality of the clients weren't coming nearly as good and as often. And I switched, and life was really, really good at that point. So think twice about Wedding Wire or not. I personally say stay away unless, again, you're the up and coming professional trying to get a foothold, or if you've got those big dollars because you're a multi-op and you want to kind of dominate the market. I think everybody else should just stay away. Now, a nemesis of mine, Facebook. No matter how much money I've spent, how many concepts, ideas, how many peers I've worked with within this industry and other industries to make sure what I was delivering would be of value and to get people on, to come to my website and everything, simply just does not work, for me at least. Now, I will preface this. There are some DJs out there who are claiming big success, and I've seen some of those numbers and they look good. But I also think there's some different approaches here. I think for the people who are succeeding in this, they're looking at it from a discount perspective. Free lighting, free photo booth, or discount on this, or having like an available date that they're giving away. Personally, for me, that's not the way I want to sell. I think it devalues my particular brand. This is not a knock on anybody that's doing it like that. This is just my personal approach to things. So for me, I always try to sell by, the quality videos to kind of to gather that experience. I've tried the long video format, the short video format, quotes from couples, videos from couples, just articles, boosted articles. I mean, just lots of different things just to try to attract different clients over. And money-wise, again, I spent quite a bit on it, and I keep on trying to do it. There's always a new way and new thoughts, new concepts. So I'm never afraid to give it a try, but I've just never seen the return on investment with it. So while I've tried all these different methods, for me, I know personally it has not worked. And again, I really don't want to knock people who have had success on this. Just for me, my style, being a single op, where I'm at, all those factors has not worked for me. So for one of the last ones I want to talk about here, the Thumbtacks of the world, the Barks of the world, all those other kind of pay per lead, you bid out for these events. I think they're terrible. I think they're terrible for the industry. I think they're terrible for the professional. I generally believe, and I know this because I started on Thumbtack when I first came into the market. They really only bring in those relatively inexpensive couples, that usually have very high expectations in all this. So first, you're getting bottom dollar results with very high expectations, typically even hard to satisfy in many cases. And I believe as a concept as a whole, as you raise your rates, while there is definitely some demand of quality and service and whatnot, I think to work with the couple tends to be a bit easier as you get to at least a certain price point. There might be a super high price point that I've never hit. And I definitely know there's a few people in that super high echelon space. They're getting $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 per event. Not my shtick. But when you're in that lower bit, I think there's this really, really high demand where they don't see the value beyond you pressing play. They're not seeing anything beyond that. So Thumbtack and Bark and all those, they're also, if I'm not mistaken, Thumbtack is partially funded by Google. So they have an incentive to boost them up visibility wise. And it's just not a good look. It's just, do you want to be bidding down to the last dollar to win a couple or anything like that? Do you want a couple that really hasn't vetted through the different services? All they have to do is search if you have a quality website or even a social page, but hopefully that quality website, they just have to hit that and fill out a form. So I think it's a totally different approach that is really the dog eat dog kind of concept. Totally not with it, totally not my style. I very much would not recommend going that route. Now, one of the last things, and this is a little bit more complicated, is the venue book. This is for you to pay a venue to be in a book and then that they'll recommend you. There's definitely some venues, I think, that it's a positive because they might have a very limited catalog of people that they market to, and that you have a very good chance of getting a good return on that. Your visibility is high. It's the venue that the person is choosing or most likely choosing. And, I think there's good value in it. I think there's also a point where if the books are really big and there's, dozens of the similar type professional in there, I think there's a definite loss in that. And those tend to be the more expensive ones to be in to boot. So I don't want to say it's kind of a pay per play kind of thing, because most venues are not going to just say, hey, if you're not in the book, you're not performing here at all. There are some, don't get me wrong, there's definitely some, and there's definitely some that expect a kickback. I know, like in Hawaii, for instance, I've heard stories of kind of that kind of kickback scheme. Luckily for me, I really have not had to deal with that in my market, but definitely want to acknowledge its existence. But being in the book itself could be positive, could be negative. You really have to make that assessment, see how much money you have to invest in it, see what your thoughts of return on these books are. I know I'm personally part of one book on a venue that's definitely one of my favorite venues to boot. And I have gotten good value over that, for the past couple of years. I've been in it since they started it. So give it some consideration, as everything. Everything you should give some level of consideration. See what your monetary investment is going to be on it, see what your returns are going to be, how much of a headache is it going to be to manage, and see how much you would really ultimately want to invest in. Now, a little bit of a philosophy on how much money you're spending on advertisement as a whole. Some people will take I want to take 5%, 10%, whatever it is of your gross revenue, and that's the number that they roll at. That's fine and dandy. Some people will take and look at something, say like Wedding Wire or not, and next thing you know, they'll say, hey, I only have to pay 2, 3, 4 weddings to pay off what I'm doing for this advertising, and that's literally the worst type of mentality to roll into with these type of investments. Think of how much money you are leaving on the table for just not being available. So like in my case, this is people calling in for inquiry and I'm already booked, or I just have an unavailable date or something like that. Those are really the core numbers to be looking at. One year I had, I think it was like 192 leads. I turned away something like 67, 68% of those leads, because it just so happened that people were inquiring on the same dates over and over again. In my philosophy, no amount of investment is really going to increase that to a real beneficial number. Let's say I converted 30 that year. I think it was actually 28, but let's just say it was 30. And if I make this big $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 investment, I might net 2 more leads, or I might net 3 more leads, because there's a good case to be made that those other potential leads are going to be spoiled. Like this year in 2020, 10/10 was definitely one of the most popular dates. If I had an investment in, say, the Wedding Wire and not, and I'm getting all these additional leads, it could be for those same dates, especially that date over and over. I get no value out of that. I get no quality out of that. So never take the approach of, oh, it only takes me 2, 3, 4 weddings to pay this off. Yeah, it might take you, say, 4, let's say you do 5. What's your net cost for those leads? If you really looked at the numbers and you saw, like I did back in 2016, and you're paying nearly $500 to convert a lead, that is just way too much money. You should be paying easily 10 times less, even $50 a lead. There's a pretty hard case there. Is like, do you really want to pay basically $50 per click, essentially, in that, or at least that person's click that converted over? So just think of it in a different mindset when you start thinking about your investments. Just don't think of it as a, I have this many events. I'm going to spend, say, this much on advertising and this much advertising. It's going to net me, say, 7 or 8 events. That might be great, but it may not. Do the math. Really kind of think that out before you set aside that cash to do that. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to stress that I think everybody should make investments throughout on this. Just don't take my word for it. Don't take other people's words for it. See this for yourself. I don't think that there's some magic bullet here. I don't think one person's opinion somehow dominates over others. I think there's a huge regionality component to this all, especially like wedding wire or not. Some people can be in one market where photographers are great for wedding wire, but DJs are great for not. And some might be none at all. Some might be social. West Coast, I've heard, is better for Yelp than other places. There's going to be a lot of different experiences that people are going to have over time and over location, and also what your business is as a whole. But as the mobile DJ, I think there's a lot of options that are out there for us. But I think there's a lot of potential pitfalls in this if we're not careful. I know I have definitely misspent some money as much as I like to kind of control and kind of keep an eye on things. I could have probably been even more miserly with things, but I always want to, take that chance, take that risk. There might be great reward out of certain things. And, what I've said here is definitely my experiences over the years. Well, I hope you liked this long-winded video, and if so, please hit that thumbs up. If you hate it, if there's something you disagree with it, hit that thumbs down. Head over to my Patreon page. Please support the channel if you can, and naturally, if you like videos like this and would love to see more, check out everything I have below. Stay tuned for more, everybody.